the process you used to create this film and Like Crazy, I believe it was the same one you used on Douchebag, which is you create a story, but there's a lot of improvisation on the day of shooting. Can you describe for me, as the co-screenwriter, what is the screenplay like for a film like this that employs that technique?
The more floral way of describing it that I've kind of figured is descriptive is it's like if a normal script is driving directions by street name, our scripts are more like by landmark. So they're a little bit less specific in terms of what the actors actually say. In fact, most of the dialogue is improvised. The script runs almost the same length as a normal screenplay because we put a lot of backstory onto the page.
And John, what's it like to shoot improvisation?
You know, Drake knows exactly what to expect, and we all do. So,
is it mapped out a little bit before he calls action? Do the actors ever say, "Okay, I'm going to do this," or "I'm going to do that," or
yeah, a little bit. A lot of times he just has them show up in the space without having seen it before. So we have to plan accordingly to that. But Drake and I sit down ahead of time, and we plan everything out. Like we sit down and we shot list the entire thing. So it is really specific as far as that goes. But then there's a lot of things where, you plan a little bit where you say, like, well, we don't know what they're going to do in the room, so we don't know where we're going to need coverage, or we don't know, and maybe it's just going to work in one shot. So we plan accordingly to that, where a lot of times we'll shoot through a doorway or through a window or something like that to begin with, so that we can get the entire scene in one full take. And also, since it's improv, he doesn't cut very often too. So a lot of times he'll say, "Let's just go to the end of the card," or until we run out of data, since it's digital.
And how long do you usually have? Because in the old days when you were shooting film, what would you get, like maybe 10, 15 minutes out of a
Yeah, we get
roll?
about 14 minutes still. Yeah, or you can have larger cards to get twice that, but we usually do 14 minutes, and he usually says, let's just go all the way. And when it's over, let's just keep going. And a lot of times that's where you get those moments where they're just sort of staring at each other. Like that moment by the swing set where it's really dark. Like the reason it's so dark in that scene, which we loved at the end, is because that was 15 minutes into a take and the sun had gone down. So that and I think that ends up being something even more special than what we intended it to be, because it's a happy accident too.
Ben, is that the reason for employing this technique? Is I guess you open yourself up more to problems or missed shots, but that you also open yourself up to little miracles like that.
I think that's exactly the reason for it. It's not necessarily an advisable way to make a movie because you do end up with, a lot of, if you're rolling for 15 minutes on one take, that ends up being a few moments in the film, you end up with a lot of footage you aren't going to use, and it creates kind of a little bit of a traffic jam in the editing room. But yeah, the result, or rather the benefit is you do stumble upon those happy accidents and those moments between the moments. And in the case of both Like Crazy and Breathe In, from the very beginning, that's a lot of what we were going for, was trying to make films that were about what wasn't said. One thing is we do account for the fact that there will likely need to be additional footage shot after principal photography, because if you're dealing with improvisation, there's a chance that some story element doesn't get captured properly, something falls through the cracks, Sometimes just connective tissue is needed for the scenes.
Or that the tone is slightly off and you need
could be.
To reshoot.
Sure, that could be. And so there's a contingency in terms of time and budget, and everyone knows we may have to go back, and that's planned for.
There are moments that Drake sees something happening and he says, "Oh, let's shoot this. Let's do," like the scene where they're playing Jenga. That was just an acting exercise that they had done in prep, which was that they would just sit and play Jenga as a family and just be in character for the whole game. And they were doing that on set, and we decided we'd shoot it once. So they played Jenga for 20 minutes, and we shot the whole thing, and then that little bit of it ends up in the movie. But then this time as well, like what was interesting is that when we did go back to do the reshoots, they fully scripted them all too. So I think there's a handful of scenes in there that were reshot that we did over 4 days, like almost a year later, that were just completely scripted.
Some of the more pivotal scenes or more important scenes, the titular scene, the breathing exercise, for example, is traditionally scripted, so that we know that we're hitting the mark.
I mean, we were there during the hurricane that year too, which we got shut down for. So there was a lot leading up to. I think there was an earthquake that year too when we were. It's like,
wow.
Yeah, and no, but we would just go with it. And then when you manufacture it, it's like my worst nightmare because you have to. You have to be shooting at the right time, and like the scene sort of after the storm when Guy and Felicity are getting to know each other more with the beers is what I mean. It was like bright sun outside the whole time during that, and we had a plan that we knew that was probably what was going to happen, and we are on such an abbreviated schedule, and we shot that over the course of 2 days, so we had a plan to manufacture it. Most of the movie is really, really natural feeling and available. Like a lot of it's available light when we're inside, so that was difficult just because we need it to fit into the same movie. There's a million ways that you can decide to make it look gloomy inside and all that. So that was probably the biggest challenge to me on that movie was trying to make it fit in with the rest.
The story of an older man, a family man, falling for a younger girl, that's been explored in that simple premise has been explored a lot of different ways. What was it that made you see a new angle or something fresh to?
Basically, we discovered and started to go with the idea that this is a story we're kind of familiar with, but the difference is it's not going to be about carnal desires. It's not going to be about an older man lusting after a younger woman. It's going to be about two kindred spirits who are different ages, unfortunately.